Deuteronomy 28 verse 2 says this in the Bible. You will experience all of God's blessings if you obey the Lord. Circle that word all. God says you will not believe what I will pour out on your life if you will live responsibly with your time, with your money, with your relationships, with your every area of your life. I will bless you in ways you cannot even imagine.
This is Pastor Rick's Daily Hope, the audio broadcast ministry of Pastor Rick Warren. As we continue with this series called Building My Life on Values That Last, Rick presses on and shows us how we benefit when we apply the biblical principles of trust, self-control, balance, respect, forgiveness, moral purity, fairness, honesty, and love to our lives. In just a few minutes, we're going to tell you about a hands-on resource that will help you develop and apply God's values in your life. It's called the Building My Life on Values That Last Guided Experience book. And you can take a quick look right now by going to PastorRick.com or by texting the word daily to 99000. That's PastorRick.com or the word daily to 99000. Right now, here's Pastor Rick Warren with part 2 of a message called Accepting Responsibility.
Daniel Webster once said, the most important idea I ever thought was when I realized that I am personally and individually accountable to God for how I lived. Now notice it says here, God knows everything. Nothing is hidden. That means He's seen everything you've ever done. It's interesting because when we rationalize our irresponsibility, one of the ways we do it is nobody will ever know. Nobody will ever know. So I can throw this trash down. Nobody will ever know. So I can steal this stuff. Nobody will ever know. So I can read this material, or on and on and on. But God knows, and He's the only one that really matters. You may be able to fool everybody in this room, your family, your boss, and everybody else, but that doesn't matter. Who you're living the responsibility for, the responsible life for, is God, and He sees it all. So that's the first reason. And that's enough. But there are 2 other reasons you need to live a responsible life. Number 2, because others are affected by my life. Because other people are affected by my life. You see, none of us lives to ourselves alone. We are all interdependent. We're not independent, we're not dependent, but we are interdependent on each other. 1 Corinthians tells us in the Bible, people should be concerned about others and not just about themselves. Now, back in the 60s, during the kind of the hippie movement, and I lived up in the Bay Area, and then I lived north of it too, and there used to be these beautiful Peter Max psychedelic posters. Some of you remember these. And one of them kind of had a 60s mantra on it that went kind of like this. It said, I was not put on this planet to live up to your expectations. And you were not put on this planet to live up to my expectations. So let me do my thing and you do your thing, and if perchance we happen to meet, that's groovy. We don't say it in such a corny way anymore, but the attitude is still around, and it goes like this. It's in Billy Joel's songs. I don't care what they say. This is my life. Or as that great theologian Sammy Davis Jr. said, I gotta be me. Or his theological partner Sinatra, I did it my way. And the basic idea behind these type of songs are, I live my life the way I want to, and what's it to you? Because if it doesn't hurt you, or if you don't know about it, who cares? It's my life, and it really doesn't matter what I do because it doesn't affect you. The problem is, you're wrong. You're wrong. Every decision you make affects somebody else, even the secret ones. Even the secret ones. Because it changes you, and you then influence other people by the changes in your life. You may not see the visible results, but every choice you make influences somebody else. And every time you're irresponsible, it hurts somebody else because we're all on this same planet. When somebody in your family has a problem, it's not their problem, it's the family's problem because it influences everybody in that family. One kid, whether the kid's on drugs or the dad's under stress, believe me, it affects everybody in the family. There is no such thing as a non-affecting decision. You, all the time with your life, influence your family, parents, kids, brothers, sisters, moms, dads, husbands, wives. The choices you make influence your friends. They influence the people in your neighborhood. They influence friends at church. They influence society at large in major and minor ways. But we are all interconnected because we're on this planet together. I mean, if I were to ask 5 of you, say, hey, or 4 of you, volunteer to go with me after service today. Let's go over to Lake Mission Viejo, and I've got a rowboat over there. And we're going to go out and catch some rays. We'll just row out in the middle of the lake and just relax for a while. So I get 4 of you to go with me. We got an 8-foot boat. We get over there and I say, okay, now each of you, here is your 1.5 foot space. Here's your space. Here's your space. Here's your 1.5 foot. Here's your 1.5 foot. This is my space over here. Okay? So we go out, we row out into the middle of the lake. We're out there relaxing, getting a tan. 20 minutes into the boat trip, I pull out a wood drill and start drilling a hole in the bottom of the boat in my space. You say, what are you doing, Rick? And I say, I'm drilling a hole. You say, well, what are you doing? You can't do that. I said, don't worry about it. It's my life. This is my space. I'm not drilling it on your space. You got your own space. You want to drill a hole, fine. You don't want to drill a hole, fine. What's good for you is fine, but what's good for me is fine. And I want to drill a hole in my space. You say, you don't understand something, Rick. We're all in the same boat. And if the boat goes down, we're all going down with it. And the Bible teaches we affect other people by our lives. Now see, it's interesting that when we are irresponsible, the 2 most common excuses, rationalizations we give are, number 1, nobody will know about it, and number 2, it won't hurt anybody. And you're wrong on both accounts. You're wrong. A man can say, oh, I can get away with this because my wife will never know. I can do this and it won't hurt my wife. And kids can say, oh, I can do this, it won't hurt my parents. And employees say, I can do this because it's a big company, it won't hurt anybody. And you're wrong. So you need to be responsible because God is watching and because other people are affected. But there's a third reason, and this is even a positive point here, and that is, I need to be responsible because God rewards it. And boy, does He reward it.
The rest of today's message is coming your way in just a few moments. But first, if you'd like to connect with Rick on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, go to PastorRick.com and click on his social media links. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for his free Daily Hope email devotional and take a look at all the other helpful resources. Again, that's PastorRick.com, or you can just text the word daily to 99000. That's the word daily to 99000.
Today, so many people are confused about who they're meant to be and what they're supposed to do with their lives. That's because they're looking in the wrong places and living by values that are at odds with God's values. That's why Pastor Rick Warren has put together a new resource that will help you to develop and apply God's values in your life. It's called Building Your Life on Values That Last. This vegan leather-bound, full-color, beautifully illustrated guided study will reveal what God has to say about responsibility, trust, self-control, balance, respect, forgiveness, moral purity, fairness, honesty, and love. And it'll show you practical ways to make the changes you need to get back on track. And here's the best part. You don't have to do this on your own strength. God will guide you every step along the way. Building your life on values that last is filled with biblical truths, practical lessons, application exercises, and lots of space for you to write down your responses to what God is teaching you. This comprehensive study tool will help you go deeper as you follow Jesus, and it's yours when you support Daily Hope financially. Now, we want to let you know that a very generous listener has offered to match your gift to Daily Hope, up to $25,000 through the month of June. So whatever you give will be doubled. Call 800-600-5004 or go to PastorRick.com right now to get your copy of this great resource and get your financial gift to Daily Hope doubled up to $25,000. That's 800-600-5004 or go to PastorRick.com right now.
This is Pastor Rick's Daily Hope, the audio broadcast ministry of Pastor Rick Warren. Once again, here's Rick.
I can do this and it won't hurt my wife. And kids can say, oh, I can do this, it won't hurt my parents. And employees say, you know, I can do this because it's a big company, it won't hurt anybody. And you're wrong. So you need to be responsible because God is watching and because other people are affected. But there's a third reason, and this is even a positive point here, and that is I need to be responsible because God rewards it. And boy, does He reward it. Deuteronomy 28 verse 2 says this in the Bible. You will experience all of God's blessings if you obey the Lord. Circle that word all. God says you will not believe what I will pour out on your life if you will live responsibly with your time, with your money, with your relationships, with your every area of your life. I will bless you in ways you cannot even imagine. One of the ways that God rewards us when we are responsible is He gives us greater responsibility. The next verse, Jesus says, to those who use well what they are given, even more will be given. And so, if you use your influence well, guess what? You become more influential. And if you use your possessions well, guess what? God will provide more of them. Why should God give you more money when you're not responsible with the finances you've got right now? He doesn't have any obligation to help you when you're living irresponsibly in that area or any other area. But He says, on the other hand, if you will be responsible, I will bless your socks off in a way you can't imagine. Now, if that's the case, how do I become a more responsible person? Well, look on the back of your outline. Anytime you want to talk about responsibility, there's a certain book you have to go to in the Bible. You know, the Bible's made up of 66 different books inside. And there's an entire book of the Bible written about how to live a responsible life. It's called the book of Proverbs. Proverbs has 31 chapters in it. That means if you read one chapter a day, you'd read through the book once a month. I want to challenge you today to read a chapter a day of Proverbs for the rest of your life. It means you'll go through it about 12 times a year. And each time you read through it in a different translation. Then get another one, read through it another one, then another one, because you'll get more and more out of it. This is the book that teaches you how to live. It teaches you things like how do you build strong relationships. It talks about how to handle wealth. It talks about how to build a business. It talks about how to get along with other people, how to save your marriage. It talks about child raising. It talks about what to do when you fail, what to do when you succeed. It's an amazing storehouse of God's wisdom. And so you have to go to Proverbs when you look at responsible living. Now, it's interesting to me that in our culture, we actually idolize irresponsible people. You take the most irresponsible people in the world and we say, oh, look at them. Aren't they cute? They just, thumb their nose to convention and to the law and to everything else, and they really are, they're free spirits. They're unique. And they're the ones who get all these awards and glory and their picture on magazine covers, and we call them great. Well, God has another word for irresponsible people. It's a four-letter word. He calls them a fool. A fool. 69 times the word fool is used in the book of Proverbs. And the same guy who wrote Proverbs wrote Ecclesiastes, the next book, and it's used 23 times in that book. Now, when we use the word fool, we usually mean stupid, dumb, low IQ, uneducated, unsophisticated, naive, not very smart. But when God uses the word fool, he says it means irresponsible. Irresponsible. He says, you know what? You can have a low IQ and not be a fool. You can have little or no education and not be a fool. But if you are irresponsible, God says, in light of the meaning of life and why he put you on earth, you're foolish if you live irresponsibly. So 69 times in the book, he says, here's what a fool does. And on the other hand, he contrasts, says, here's what a wise person, a responsible person does. Now, we don't have time to go into all 69 of those today. So let me just give you 4 to get started. 4 ways to get started on being a more responsible person. And your homework this week is to go find the other 65 and write them down, because they're all there. Okay, number 1, let's just get real practical. How can I be a more responsible person? Number 1, by saving my money. By saving my money. God says, if you're not saving any of your money for the future, you are being a fool. You're being irresponsible. For instance, the average Japanese citizen saves 25% of their income in Japan. The average European saves 14 to 15% of their income. The average American saves less than 5% of his or her income. Why? Because we have bought into this instant gratification society that says, I've got to have it now. Buy now, pay later, live for today, enjoy it all now, and don't worry about tomorrow. And as a result, the average American puts $1,300 on his credit card for every $1,000 he makes. What's wrong with this picture? I'll tell you what it is. He's acting like the government. Okay? Now, only the government can get away with that. It's called deficit spending, because they got a little machine in the back that prints the money. And unless you have one of those in your garage, you're headed for trouble. You're headed for trouble. Deficit spending. And so we spend, and Americans are not saving anything. God says that's foolish. The average American spends 6 hours a week in shopping-related activities. Now, some of you blow that statistic out of the water. I know. I've seen you, when the going gets tough, the tough go shopping, And yet it's interesting, by the way, that the more educated you are, the more you shop. So some of you go, see, honey, I'm smart. See, I'm really smart. I'm getting ready to go out on a little educational field trip, darling. God says that's dumb if you're spending all your money and you're not saving anything. Look at what it says. Let's read Proverbs 21:20 with great guilt. Okay? Ready? Let's read it aloud. The wise man saves for the future, but the foolish man spends whatever he gets. Ouch. Spends whatever he gets. Now you say, Rick, why are you making a big deal of this? Because did you know that the number one cause of divorce is not adultery? It's not having an affair. The number one cause of divorce is not abuse. It's debt. 54% of the divorces in America occur over financial pressures. We have now decided that the marriage vow is till debt do us part. And God says that's not very smart. Now let me just get real honest with you. I read a survey this week that said most baby boomers are going to be flat broke in retirement. And they're going to live in abject poverty. Why? Because they're not saving anything. Are you teaching your kids how to save? Are you teaching them how to make three little banks or three little boxes, and you divide up in allowances? This is for spending. This is for tithing, giving back to God. This is for savings. And when they get over, you get them, open them a bank account, and you teach them how to give, how to save, and how to spend. More important, are you modeling that, or is everything just going out the door? Regardless of how little your income is, you need to learn to live on a margin, where you live on less than you make so you can put away some to save. God says that's being responsible. Somebody asked John D. Rockefeller, who at one time was the world's wealthiest man, how did you amass such a fortune? He said, it's real simple. I've abided by it all my life. He said, I give the first 10% as a tithe back to God. I save 10%, and I live on the other 80%. Not a bad starting point. I would suggest that if you were being haphazard in your finances, that you might start that agenda. Returning the first 10% to God, as he says, saving 10%, and learning to live on the rest. Why? The Bible says this, the fool thinks only about having a good time now. And like it or not, God uses money to test you. He is testing your responsibility.
This is Pastor Rick's Daily Hope. Now, if you've missed any part of this broadcast, including portions we didn't have time for today, simply go to PastorRick.com to listen again anytime. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for Rick's free email devotional and check out all the other helpful resources available to you. That's PastorRick.com. Rick will be back in just a moment to close out our time together, so please stay with us. Today, so many people are confused about who they're meant to be and what they're supposed to do with their lives. That's because they're looking in all the wrong places and living by values that are at odds with God's values. That's why Pastor Rick Warren has put together a new resource that will help you to develop and apply God's values in your life. It's called Building Your Life on Values That Last. This vegan, leather-bound, full-color, beautifully illustrated guided study will reveal what God has to say about responsibility, trust, self-control, balance, respect, forgiveness, moral purity, fairness, honesty, and love. And it'll show you practical ways to make the changes you need to get back on track. And here's the best news. You don't have to do this in your own strength. God will guide you every step along the way. It's filled with biblical truths, practical lessons, application exercises, and lots of space for you to write down your responses to what God is teaching you. This comprehensive study tool will help you go deeper as you follow Jesus, and it's yours when you support Daily Hope financially. Now, we want to let you know that a very generous listener has offered to match your gift to Daily Hope up to $25,000 through the month of June. Here's Pastor Rick to tell you more.
Now, let me explain this. $25,000 matching grant means that when you give, it doubles your donation. But here's the thing. I want you to pray about this. I appreciate your giving. Today, your gift can be doubled, but please hear me out. I only want you to give if you feel led by God to do so. Do not give under pressure, because God doesn't reward that kind of giving. So I want you to just pause and say, God, you want me to be a part of this giving today on the matching gift. You see, your financial generosity actually makes it possible for me to teach you and to teach other people all around the world. You know, the Daily Hope broadcast actually goes into refugee camps where nobody can afford discipleship materials. Your support helps all these people in the refugee camps learn about Jesus and helps them to grow in their faith. So again, thanks everybody for your generosity. I love you, and I'm confident that God is going to use your donation to bring more people into the kingdom. Thanks for listening, and join me next time as we continue to look into God's Word for our daily hope.
Call 800-600-5004 or go to PastorRick.com right now to get your copy of this great resource and get your financial gift to Daily Hope doubled up to $25,000. That's 800-600-5004 or go to PastorRick.com right now. This program is sponsored by Daily Hope Ministries and your generous financial support.